That's 1994, Cowboys Saints, Larry Allen chasing down Darian Connor after he'd been chewed out by the offensive line coach for not trying to make the play in practice that same week. So he decided, I don't want to be chewed out again. I better make the play. And a guy who might have witnessed that moment is with us now, former Larry Allen teammate, Jason Garrett. Good morning, Coach.
Good morning, Mike. I was standing right there. Never forget it. Larry Allen was something else. And I love the fact that everybody's showing that play because it's symbolic of what he was all about as a player.
Well, yeah. How about this, Jason? Everybody, I think when we all think of a guy like Larry Allen, right, we think of this, just this absolute smasher, this killer on the offensive line, right? You know, I got a chance to meet him way back when real quick. But talk about the person, Larry Allen, a little bit, because we'll get into the player, but I want to hear about the person a little.
Obviously an incredible player. And one of the things that everybody talks about with him is how strong he was. And it made me laugh a lot and sometimes get me a little mad when they would show that 700-pound bench press and the bars bending and all of that. And people think that's what Larry Allen's all about. What he's all about is what you're seeing on the screen right now. He was the most dominant offensive lineman I've ever seen, but a better guy. An absolute better guy. He was someone who didn't talk that much, but he had an incredible spirit. And you see that smile right there?
Yeah.
That's what he was like all the time. He always had a big dip in his mouth. It always was kind of spilling out of his mouth. And he just was an incredible teammate. He's an amazing family man and, a dear friend. And this is a really, really sad day for so many people who knew him because his accolades on the field speak for itself, but he was just an amazing guy that we're all fortunate to be around.
Shereen Williams presented him for enshrinement in the Hall of Fame, and she made the point yesterday, he's one of those guys where you just say his name and walk away, but it was the first one she'd ever done, so she felt like she couldn't take the chance. She needed to go ahead and be thorough, but he really is, Coach, one of the all-time greats, and that's something we cannot lose sight of.
Yeah, anybody who follows football or watched him play, he is the ultimate guy who leaps off the screen. And, you think about those amazing teams in the 90s that he was on. And, Troy Aikman, first ballot Hall of Famer, Emmitt Smith, first ballot Hall of Famer, Michael Irvin, Charles Haley, all these different guys, Deion Sanders, first ballot Hall of Famer, one of the all-time greats. I'm not so sure Larry didn't do his job better than everybody else did their job. He was so different than everybody else trying to play his position. And if you think about his career, gets drafted in the second round. He plays in 10 games as a rookie as a swing tackle. He just goes in and plays left, and then he goes in and plays right because of injury. And then, okay, I'm going to play right guard. I'll play right tackle. Then, okay, let's move him over to left tackle, then play left guard. He makes the Pro Bowls and all pro at every one of the positions. And you often think about the guys who separate themselves. It's how they play, the spirit that they play with, the dominance they play with. And he was that guy. And he didn't say a whole lot, but one of the smartest players we had on our team, one of the best teammates. Hudson Houck, the line coach you were talking about, used to always say that Larry would not leave the meeting until he knew everything from A to Z. And he was really smart. He would sit in meetings and he would ask questions that he knew the answers to make sure everybody else knew the answers. And maybe more than anything else, he was the most prideful guy. Like if you ever came close to beating Larry Allen in a one-on-one pass rush drill, it was like he was gonna kill you. It was for his life. And his identity as a person was tied to that pass rush rep. And again, the best ones I've been around have that same mentality, and he's at the top of the list.
All right, so two, like a little bit of a two-part question. So what I think you're saying here, first part is he's one of the freakiest athletes you were ever around, and you've been around
Absolutely.
football your whole life, so you put him up there in the pantheon of the greats that you talk about.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right. And then the second part is, we know the human's awesome, the player's awesome, right? But the workouts and all of that is part of it. Yeah, bench press, sure. But damn, he must have been doing some running and stuff as well to be able to run like that. And I've heard they're kind of legendary. Like Kind of explain that to us. Take us back to those days of watching Larry Allen work out.
Well, this footage right here is incredible. That's 700 pounds. The bar is bending. Nobody lifts that.
No.
He went to the NFL strongest man competition and bench pressed 225 43 times. And
That's
I mean,
incredible.
it's comical how strong he was. But again, I go back to the playing. Everyone talks about that. You could go to Venice Beach and find some guy who bench presses 225 43 times.
I don't
right?
know. I'm not sure, but okay. All right, I'll take your word for it.
Okay. But watch him pull. There he is.
Yeah,
It's like a bag of chips.
it really is. It's like he's just doing the bar for the rest of us.
And I'm not too sure many people could do the bar 43 times.
Right.
And he's just laughing at it. But when you watch Larry Allen play, he'd pull and he'd come up in the hole and there'd be a linebacker coming across and he'd just give him a left forearm shiver and the guy would go flying across the tape. And you say, by the way, that guy's a 5-time Pro Bowler. He's 245 pounds.
Right.
He's treating him like a rag doll. And that's just how he played. So, you know, it was a dominant player who, again, leaped off the tape and made such an impression. You know, we used to laugh about it. It'd be the Larry Allen flu or Larry Allen-itis. All of a sudden, the great defensive lineman that you're playing against that week, he's got a little hammy. He tweaked his pec a little bit when he was lifting. None of these guys would play in the game,
That's
you
great.
know, because they're like, I'm not going against that guy.
Right.
And we're talking about the best guys, too.
Let's take it back to 1994, that rookie year. That was the year that he impressed everyone chasing down Darian Connor. When was the moment that you said, holy cow, this guy's different? What was it that caused you to come to that conclusion?
What's interesting about the time, just to provide some perspective, the offensive line at the time was incredible. If you think about those Super Bowl teams, anybody who watched them, they would say, hey, it starts up front. I mean, amazing Pro Bowl players across the board. So Larry Allen, as great as he became, was not a starter as a rookie. You had to earn it back then. And people saw it like, wow, he's pretty good. He's going to crack this lineup at some point. And then Mark Tuinei was playing left tackle, and he got hurt one game, I can remember, against Washington, and Larry goes in and plays there. And then Eric Williams, our right tackle, who was an amazing player, got in a car accident. And so he couldn't finish the season. So Larry goes in and plays right for the rest of his time. Now, granted, he's one of the greatest guards of all time, but as a rookie, he's playing swing tackle, and everybody's looking around like, wow, this guy's going to be something special. And if you look at those accomplishments, look closely. 6-time first-team All-Pro, all-decade team in the 90s and the 2000s. So as accomplished a player as I've ever been around, but you saw it right away in training camp. And what I was referring to before, that competitive fire, like in practice, he's competing like none other. And if anybody ever kind of gets a side on him or pushes him back, which rarely happened, I mean, it was to the death, you know? He wasn't going to let it happen. So he was so prideful and so talented and wanted to be great and showed it every day.
How about Larry Allen in the locker room? What was he like there? Was he an enforcer? Was he quiet, right? I've been around a lot of great offensive linemen, right, who are kind of quiet, but every now and then, like, hey, if the defense is playing the music too loud or something like that, they go over and turn it down, and no one even messes with them, right? What was Larry Allen's status in the locker room like that?
Well, obviously, nobody messed with him.
Yeah.
You know, part of the dynamic of those teams was the legend of Charles Haley.
Right.
And Charles Haley was a guy who anybody who's been around him knows that like none other, as smart a player as you've ever been around,
Right.
but just
Can talk and push buttons and do it all that way.
That's it.
Right.
Push buttons is the word. And he would push everybody's buttons, and he would push you and challenge you. And everybody had to stand up to Charles Haley at some point in the locker room as he's calling you out about what you're wearing or what happened yesterday or whatever it was.
Right.
You had to stand up to Charles Haley. And Larry Allen's probably the one guy in that whole mix that Charles Haley knew enough. I'm never messing with this guy.
Right.
He'd throw me out the back window. And
that
so
says
he
it
was
all.
quiet. Yeah, he was quiet. He always had a big dip in his mouth. He was always observing and laughing at stuff. He'd be like, shh, shh, shh. He just had that thing. I can remember his rookie year, we did a radio show together, and the host asked me a question and I answered. The host asked Larry a question and he's like, he just is laughing and dipping and whatever. And he does this about 3 times. And finally I'm like, Larry, this is a radio show. You got to answer out loud, And he
That's
didn't
great.
do many of those. But unbelievable guy. Everybody loved him. I mean, the respect that he had as a player and the love that people had for him as a person was unmatched. And like I said, it's a really sad day for all of us.
Hey, last one for me. I look back at the 1994 draft class. Most of the great offensive linemen that we've seen over the years were no-brainers coming out of college. He lasted all the way until 46. Now, there were 4 Hall of Fame players taken ahead of him in those 45 selections. How much of a chip did he have? And how in the world, in hindsight, did he last through 45 picks and was even there for the Cowboys with that great offensive line to take it 46?
Well, I'll play pop psychologist with you for a minute. He grew up in Compton, stabbed 12 times in his neck and his back, went to 4 different high schools. I mean, there's all this story that comes from. He ended up going to Vintage High School in Napa Valley before going to Sonoma State. So, I mean, to think about him coming from that place and what he was all about. And I can remember seeing highlights of him, and he just was destroying people at that level. The big question for him obviously was, okay, he's a Division II player. He's clearly dominant. He's an incredible player when you watch him on tape, but it's a big transition from Sonoma State to the NFL. So I'm sure a lot of the big school guys got picked first. People were afraid of, hey, can he make this transition? Is this real? What kind of competition is he going against? But at some point you say, I've seen enough. And thankfully the Cowboys took that approach and got him. And you said chip on his shoulder. He had a chip on his shoulder. He had it every single day in everything that he did. And it showed up in his play. He was angry, absolutely angry when he played each and every day. And I keep going back to that word prideful, not in a bad way, but you hear those legendary stories about Michael Jordan in practice. It's the same mentality. I am going to dominate you. Everything I do. And he did it in practice. He did it in the games. He did it for a long time, maybe better than anybody I've ever seen.
Coach, great words and awesome stuff. We appreciate you making time for us today to share your memories of Larry Allen, our condolences on the passing of your teammate, and we look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you so much. One of the all-time best.
See you, JG.
There he is, Jason Garrett. We'll be back with more PFT Live right after this.
Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.